may have seen a lot of buzz about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Some praising the game, some say the game came out undercooked, like you took cookies out of the oven a few minutes early so it's still really hot and it burns your hands when you try to pick it up because it goops all over like it's not done. And I think most people would agree that the game came out unfinished. The glitches and bugs in this game are unacceptable for a property as big as Pokemon, which, need I remind you, is the second highest earning franchise on the entire planet. And the graphics look like when you accidentally press tile when you're choosing a desktop background. And I don't want to hear that graphics don't matter in the comments. Some of my favorite games have bad graphics, but this is laughable for the second highest earning franchise in the world. It's not a stylistic choice like Valheim or Minecraft. The graphical issues in Scarlet and Violet are like purely technical ones that you have to be on an amateurish level in order to fix, like aliasing, frame rate, draw distance / pop-in, and clipping. Like, this is amateur stuff. The performance of the game is just so bad. For those who haven't played it, it's like trying to run or punch in a dream and it just doesn't work. Yet it also happens to be one of the most addicting Pokemon games that I've played in a long time. For comparison, here's Switch's 2017 launch title Breath of the Wild compared to 2022's Scarlet and Violet. So it's not an argument of Switch hardware being old, and that's why the game runs so bad, because both are open world adventure games. Breath of the Wild wasn't perfect, but it ran very well and looked stunning with a cel-shaded art style. Switch's hardware could be more powerful. Right now the Switch is like a Dodge Neon in a world of better cars. I don't know cars, but I think that's a lukewarm excuse for Game Freak's poor development of the newer Pokemon games. So what's going on here? Because I think this iceberg is deeper than a 14-year-old reblogging black and white photos with a Joji quote on it. I don't think the answer is so simple that Game Freak just messed up or they don't care anymore, or that Game Freak can't make a good game, because clearly they've made some of our favorites. People say that the Pokemon game's quality has gone downhill over time, especially when they made the transition into 3D. So let's get to the bottom of why Pokemon is gaming's most successful failure. For those that don't know, Nintendo makes most of their flagship titles like Mario and Zelda in-house, except for Pokemon. The mainline Pokemon games are made by a company called Game Freak. And a big thing people are saying right now is that Game Freak should not be making the Pokemon games anymore, because astonishingly, after Sword and Shield received mixed reviews, especially about the graphics, Scarlet and Violet look much worse. I mean, this 2022 game looks worse than a 2002 Zelda game. And to that, I don't think Nintendo can go to Game Freak and just tell them to go eat a sock and hang out with Lickitung. You think that guy's breath smells? Nintendo can't tell Game Freak to get out of town and stop working on the Pokemon games, because they can't. Pokemon was created by Game Freak, not Nintendo. I know. Even though in our heads, Pokemon is synonymous with Nintendo, Pokemon wasn't created by Nintendo. What happened was Nintendo had just dropped the original Game Boy, and in 1990, Game Freak's founder and president Satoshi Tajiri came to Nintendo with Pokemon. And they essentially worked on it together, with Game Freak making the game, and while Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto lent him his expertise and helped in other ways, like it was his lovely idea to release Pokemon games in twos, so basement dwellers can spend double the cash to get both exclusive games. Anyway, the idea with Red and Blue, Scarlet and Violet, Pea and Pooh, and Bing and Bong came from the fact that the original Game Boy came with a link cable. This is like ancient aliens technology to kids these days. Back in my day, I could only get Growlithe from standing in the corner of the classroom with my friend and physically insert a cable into each Game Boy and trade Pokemon that way. And that was after walking 5 miles in the rain, sleet, and snow to get to class. Back in my day. So the link cable gave Game Freak's president the idea that people could trade their Pokemon collections and get kids to socialize over a common interest. So the brand of Pokemon is owned by the Pokemon Company, and the Pokemon Company is owned by Game Freak and Nintendo, and a third one. Nintendo can't just push them out of making the game, even if it does only run at 10 frames per second on a good day. And unfortunately, I've been hopeful for a fix like many fans. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold over 10 million copies in the first 3 days, making them Nintendo's biggest launch of all time. Not Pokemon's biggest launch, Nintendo's biggest launch of all time. There is no incentive for them to go fix and patch this game. They've already won. 10 million copies. That's like if the entire country of Portugal decided to own this moving picture book. Or if you purchased the sponsor of today's video, Liquid IV. Was that a smooth transition? Liquid IV is a great tasting electrolyte drink mix that's perfect for staying hydrated. Like when you're out there still playing Pokemon Go. What year is it? I just wanted to make a Pokemon reference. Drinking one hydration multiplier hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. So you can get back to running around and chasing those little Pokemans of yours in that little game. Or working out, I guess, if you do that too. Let me show you how it works in case you can't figure it out. First you open the thing, and then you pour it in. Shaky, shaky, drinky, drinky, and now you're quenchy, quenchy. Good job. If you want to try these hydration multiplier flavors, click the link down below or use my code GABIBELLE for 20% off and free shipping. Thank you to Liquid IV for sponsoring this video, and back to complaining about why Pokemon games have gotten worse. Pokemon games used to be good. They really were, and it's not even just me being blinded by nostalgia goggles. They're so replayable that people are still streaming and replaying Pokemon Red and Blue from 1996 today. As time went on though, more and more Pokemon fans began to fall out, especially after the main franchise's jump into 3D with Pokemon X and Y. And it pretty much got worse from there for a lot of fans, not all, because of reused boring animations, gimmicky features that just get swapped out with each generation. I mean, the jump into 3D was supposed to be exciting and new and refreshing with Pokemon, but instead we got worse animations than Pokemon Stadium that came out in the late 90s. And with every generation, nothing actually made the games better or more functional and fun. It feels like they got lazy. Like every new sports game is just the same game with an updated roster. Pokemon's first game on a main home console, Sword and Shield in 2019, was met with a lot of criticism for reusing the handheld 3DS's Pokemon models and animations. It just doesn't, that's not how it should work. While the story was pretty boring, and of course, the graphics were ass. People were expecting a home console mainline Pokemon game to be visually and technically impressive, and it was just really disappointing, and I somehow still spent 90 hours in it. Pokemon is like that ex you keep going back to and you don't know why. After Pokemon Sword and Shield came out, Pokemon Let's Go, Arceus, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came out, all with valid criticisms that have been watered down by fans saying, oh, at least Pokemon's going in the right direction. At least they're trying something new by adding open world, because Pokemon traditionally is an extremely linear game. And you're right that they are moving in the right direction. Open world Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is extremely fun, and I am loving the core of the game when it doesn't crash. But it feels like they're never arriving.
Everyone says Game Freak's taking a step in the right direction. Game Freak's moving in the right direction with trying stuff. But their response was Game Freak has walked a marathon in the right direction and still hasn't crossed the finish line.
And I have some speculative answers for why this is happening. If you think about the scale at which gaming overall has grown over the 26 years since Pokemon started, it becomes an obvious reflection of today's gaming standards and culture. And I think the reasons are developers getting less and less time between game releases, complacency, and the scope of Pokemon after almost 30 years. One of the biggest questions is that if Pokemon is one of Nintendo's biggest moneymakers, why aren't they investing more time and money into making the games not only good and functional, God, the bare minimum, but visually and technically impressive. They have the money, the time, and the manpower. What's going on? From a purely corporate standpoint, you would think Nintendo and Game Freak would be pouring money into their money printer of a game series. On the other hand, they could also be choosing not to put more time and money into it because it's so profitable that they don't have to. It's an endless loop in logic. It's gonna sell anyway, clearly, and they don't have to reinvest because 66.6 of Pokemon's profits actually comes from merchandising. Maybe those paranoid moms were right all along. Only $17 billion comes from the games. Scarlet and Violet are the worst games in the series when it comes to performance and Metacritic reviews, but are also the fastest selling. This could be because of the brand recognition and the cultural powerhouse that they've created, but it could also be because Nintendo fanboys like me will eat whatever garbage meal they cook up in the kitchen and put in front of me. Crap pie. It feels like we're regressing. Next year they're gonna release Frogger. We're gonna go back in time. Here's the timeline of mainline Pokemon games. You can physically see, not mentally, not hypothetically, you can visually, physically see each generation had plenty of time to develop before moving on to the next generation. Until 2016's release of Pokemon Sun and Moon for the 3DS, where they improved plenty of features that people didn't like from the first 3D Pokemon game X and Y. And I'm specifically talking about mainline 3D Pokemon games because spin-offs like Pokemon Stadium were not made by Game Freak. Those were made in-house by Nintendo. Then you can literally see the generations getting shorter and shorter, with more releases back to back to back. What am I squeezing? There's no way that the game developers had enough time to be putting out Scarlet and Violet, Legends Arceus, Diamond and Pearl Remake, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and 2 DLCs in 3 years with only 169 nice employees. When back in the day, they were spending up to 5 years on a generation of Pokemon back when they were just 2D. Pokemon, at least to the higher-ups of Nintendo, seems to have become less of a passion project and more of a product that you just clock in and out of like a job, because it is a job. There's no way to tell for sure if the developers themselves even care anymore. I've gotta imagine that there's at least one dork that works at Game Freak that truly loves Pokemon and wants to see the games be fantastic. But despite any new ideas or changes the developers may want, all the decisions are ultimately up to the people in charge. Many current game development cycles have become annual releases. It's likely that Game Freak is just trying to keep up with the Call of Duties and the EA Sports games that these massive studios poop out every year with teams of literally thousands of people. And for comparison, Breath of the Wild had a development team of 300 by the end of production over a course of 5 years. Scarlet and Violet was only in production for 3 years, while working on several other titles in that time. And these numbers don't include localization teams and outsourcing. Since we've already covered complacency and crunch time, let's have a quick chat about the scope of Pokemon after nearly 30 years. Pokemon is old enough to vote, get married, and have a disappointing morning after drinking 2 glasses of wine the night before. Where did my youth go? Just like a washed-up YouTuber that is running out of ideas like I will inevitably become, there's only so much new stuff they can add to Pokemon. Mario is over 30 and still fixing pipes for Peach, but there's so many different things you can make with Mario. You can only add so many more Pokemon. There's over 900 now, none of which are a capybara or a good chicken Pokemon besides Torchic. I want like a pure chicken. Give me a chicken. And clearly they've reached the limit to how many Pokemon they can include in a game at a time, due to both time and production constraints. I think there's a lot they can do to be creative with Pokemon, but I imagine that the higher-ups just want the same thing churned out every year, because the money says it's working, so why change it? Besides taking it to open world, which I love that they're doing, what more can they really do, because they've exhausted so many creative avenues throughout each generation. I mean, they're really just plopping the game in different areas, which, whatever, it's fine. I mean, I know what they can fix, but that's the bare minimum, like just making the game run properly, please. Hi, it's me, Gabby from the future. So apparently Nintendo is releasing an update for Pokemon Scarlet Violet. By the time this video comes out, the patch will already be out. Apparently they are addressing the bug issues and they've apologized for the performance of the game. While it is nice that they are fixing the issues that people have been complaining about, there is something to be said that the release of a game should not be with this many bugs at the release date. It shouldn't take Nintendo an extra week to address the patches when a lot of people have already completed the entire game. I think the game should just drop working like it used to, and I don't think this is a good norm for the gaming industry these days. Oh, you want a game to work when on release day? Yeah, you shouldn't expect that. Why shouldn't we expect that? You buy a game for $60, it should work on launch day. But overall, I am happy to see the game being patched. I haven't downloaded it yet. Okay, this is an update to the update. I downloaded the patch and the game probably runs 5% better, so it's still pretty bad. Maybe they can start by making the stories more interesting and involved, like what Scarlet Violet started doing with each gym challenge before you fight the gym leader being a different activity that mostly isn't just battling Pokemon again, as well as they've added 2 more storylines that aren't just defeating gyms, and they could give the developers more time. So yeah, I'll be completing the Pokedex and spending a lot of time playing this new game where you can make sandwiches. And this comes from a place of love because I love Pokemon. I was always obsessed with Pokemon as a kid and growing up, and I just want the games to be good. And of course, some of you will say, well, you're having fun in the game, so what's the problem? Well, I'd like to have fun in a working game. Really, that's not asking for much. And of course, it's impossible for me to have covered everything in this video, so be sure to add to the conversation in the comments and subscribe so I can hit 300K. Okay, I'm gonna go play more Pokemon. Bye.